Hey there, Nicole Frost of Frost Yarn. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to properly scour a new yarn and do a dye test to make sure that you pick the correct dye method for how the particular yarn takes dye. So we call that dye uptake. Not all fibers take dye the same. You can use the identical process, the same amount of yarn. You could put them side by side in the same batch and they'll be wildly different. If you go under my hashtag Frost Yarn Dye tutorial on Instagram, you will find some examples of me dyeing different types of fibers to show how they uptake dye differently in the same bath. So anyway, this is really important when you have a mill that you want to work with, and also if you're testing out a new company like Wool to Dye For or Nomad Yarns, or there used to be Henry's Attic, there's Chester Wool Co. is in Canada and the UK, and various other, Ashland Bay. If you just want to see what the dye looks like, so order a test skein, obviously cut it into minis, and there you go. So this is going to show also, I look to see how the ply behaves, because it looks one way when it's fresh out the mill, but you can tell if there's too much twist or uneven twist distribution in the yarn if you see buckling, or once it gets wet, it's like curly hair. So if it's not perfectly balanced, you'll see the twists either unplying or overplied in certain areas, which not everyone cares about. I like uneven yarn. I like a yarn that looks rustic, but there are people that want the absolute smoothest, most beautifully, perfectly milled, hangs perfectly balanced, all that stuff. And they're going to complain if while they're knitting, the ply is coming undone because it's unevenly distributed from the way that it was milled. So anyway, I hope this video is informative and quick enough that you could watch it on your smoke break or your lunch break, and that it helps you understand that BFL is not going to take the dye like Merino, is not going to take the dye like Rambouillet or Ramboule, I don't know how it's pronounced, not French. Anyhow, and the higher the micron, right? So anything over 24 is going to look significantly duller color-wise than anything 24 and below. Standard Merino is 24 micron. Superfine Merino would be in the 17 to 19 micron range. What I will be dyeing on is 15 micron single source. Hope that helps. So I cut minis. This is one skein turned into 6 minis. This is another skein turned into 6 minis. This one I'm going to dye with absolutely no scouring. These I'm going to scour. I'm using eucalyptus mint, and it doesn't have any phosphates or anything harsh that will strip the wool. Let these sink down nice and slow. So let's pull this back. Let's see here. Yeah, you can see a little bit of the lanolin and the dirt when I pull this back coming out. So I'm going to give this one wash at just under boiling, one rinse, a complete cool down, and then into the dye pots it goes. Are unscoured, and I'm going to dye 2 side-by-side sets, one scoured, one unscoured, to see the difference in dye uptake. Our scoured skeins, it looks like all of the dye is absorbed nicely. And let's look at our unscoured skeins. Nah, a little bit of excess dye. I'd say probably 1/3%. Let's see here. Let's check another color. Okay, so some absorbed, some didn't. Here is the finished result. This is the unscoured wool, and this is the scoured wool. And you can really tell the difference because look at the difference in dye uptake. So we have these lighter and darker patches, which is the lanolin repels the dye. And as they're scoured is totally even. So same thing, you can really tell. Even though this is 15 micron merino, it really didn't take the dye well, because this is 3.5%. It should be quite vivid, and I'm going to show you the other skeins. Non-superwash is just never going to take the color like superwash, but it's just not that if you look, this is supposed to be speckling, so it's not even close. And that's typical of non-superwash to not. Difference. This is the same dye color and the same dye concentration. This is a superwash blend, non-superwash. So that should give you a pretty good idea of what to expect. Overall, you know, this feels lovely. It's a 15 micron single source, one flock, small mill, but I'm a color whore and I would, you know, this is not bright enough for my tastes. So I think it's really important to do these dye tests, because if you don't and you end up buying a ton of it and you don't like how it dyes and your customers don't respond well, right? Then you're not going to be able to sell it and you're not going to be able to stay in business. I wanted to show you an Italian superfine merino. This is a 17 micron, and the difference in how it took dye. Like, for example, right across here, this is the same color, but it's much more vibrant on this skein than it is on this skein. And not only that, but look at how it speckles. This is non-superwash, untreated. And you can clearly see the speckles, and they're bright and they're crisp and they're tiny, right? Even these yellow speckles, right? Look at that yellow speckle right there. Now I speckled this one with yellow and look what happened. And I think it's important to always speckle so you know whether or not to create a colorway with speckles. But look, it's just, I'd say not even a blotch. It's really just like marbled in there, but you don't see the speckles at all. So not all superfines are created equal. This one's 17 micron, this one's 15 micron. This one took the dye better. This one has much clearer speckling, and it also has less overmixing of colors like this one did. So hope that helps. Again, if this video did anything for you and you haven't donated to the campaign, check out www.ko-fi.com/NicoleFrost to donate. Donation allows me to continue to source materials, spend hours filming, cutting, editing, and putting up video tutorials free to the public. So I would really appreciate it if you did that, especially Christmas time. I just ordered $600 more of supplies and I got about $212 in donations. So I am out $400 at the moment.